Hello everybody, this is the lesson on 6.4, which are graphs of sine and cosine functions with shifts and all that good stuff. So learning targets are graphing sine and cos, determining the period and the amplitude of sine and cosine, and writing equations given a sine or cosine graph. Okay, so first let's look at the basic shape of a sine and cosine curve. Sine always starts at 0, well, barring any shifts, and then it goes up to the top of the unit circle at 1, and then it goes back down to 0, and then it goes down to the bottom of the unit circle at -1, and then it comes back to 0. Okay, so if you were to trace the sine values around the unit circle, this is what it would unravel to. Now, cosine on the unit circle at 0 actually starts at 1. And then as you go to pi over 2, it's at 0. And then as you get to pi, it's -1. And then as you get to 3 pi over 2, it's 0. And then to finish off a 2 pi cycle, you're back at 1. So I hope you guys can see where this comes from off the unit circle. Okay, very important to know these general sketches. Now let's talk about shifts and period changes and amplitude. So this number out front, and this goes for both, this A is called the amplitude. And it will help you find the range. That tells you how high and low it goes. Okay, and then this B affects the period. That's how long it takes to do a full cycle. Now usually it's 2 pi, but if there's a number here in front of the x, the new period is going to be 2 pi divided by that b. All right, moving on. The c, or the number with the x, would be a horizontal shift. A lot of people call this a phase shift. And that'll tell you obviously if it shifts left or right. And then lastly, the D is going to be the vertical shift. And again, same things apply to cosine. All right, let's try some. So on A, B, and C here, we want you to describe the transformation, so any changes that are happening, and then also determine the domain and the range. Okay, so letter A. First of all, if you see any number out front, that is the amplitude. So we're going to say the amplitude has changed to 3. I don't see any other numbers or any other changes, so that's the only transformation. And then we need to do domain and range. Okay, I should probably write on something. Domain for any sine or cosine graph is all reals. The range is usually -1 to 1, but if the amplitude changed to 3, now the range is -3 to 3. Okay, moving on to B. Okay, so B has a number in front of the x, and that is what that B is. Okay, so that tells you there's going to be a period change. So this one we're saying there's a new period, and it's going to be 2 pi divided by b, which is 2, and that simplifies to pi. So this one, instead of completing a full cycle in 2 pi, we're going to actually complete the full cycle in pi. Okay, what else? Oh, something that actually didn't come up above, if there is a negative out front, that's a reflection. So this one also has a reflection over the x-axis. A negative outside will flip over the x-axis. Okay, domain and range. Domain again is always all reals. Range, now this one's amplitude is like a 1, so the range is still -1 to 1. The reflection doesn't matter. Okay, and then C. This one, the amplitude is 0.5, so that's a change. There's also a period change. So the new period is 2 pi divided by pi, which reduces to 2. And there's also a vertical shift because it's on the outside, so we're shifting down 2. All right, and then the domain again is all reals, and the range, if the amplitude is 0.5, then the range is negative 0.5 to positive 0.5. Okay, now let's get into some graphs. How do we graph these from scratch? Using 5 key points. Okay, so I like to make tables. Now you guys don't have to, but I'm going to make our whole transformation table here. And I'm going to write X and Y. Again, if you guys have another way to do this, totally fine. As long as you have your 5 key points, I'm okay with it. So let's graph it, or let's get our table drawn just for sine with no transformations. So our 5 key points are going to be 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. These are going to be our 5 key points. Okay, so 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And the y values are the same ones from up here. 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. Right? That's from the unit circle and from that top graph. So now we got to say, okay, well, what's changing here? Now, something that's a little tough, if it's a period change, if it's happening with the x, we actually do the opposite. So if it says x divided by 4, the shift is actually multiplying by 4. That horizontal shrink or stretch is always the reciprocal. So dividing by 4 is really multiplying by 4. That can be a little tricky. And then for the y values, we're just affecting the amplitude here is 3. So all the y values are going to get multiplied by 3. Okay, that's how you would get your new graph or your new data points here. So we're going to multiply all these by 4. So that's 0. If you multiply by 4, that's 2 pi. Multiply by 4, that's 4 pi. Multiply by 4, that's 6 pi. And multiply by 4, that's 8 pi. And then all the y's we're multiplying by 3. 0, 3, 0, negative 3, 0. Okay, so purple and red, that is, those are all your new points. And then let's talk about if it makes sense. So we're going from 0 to 2 pi to 4 pi to 6 pi to 8 pi. And then our y values go from negative 3 to 3. And let's just plot those points. 0, 0, 2 pi 3, 4 pi 0, 6 pi negative 3, 8 pi 0. Again, this is just one way to do this. Okay, notice it has the same curve. It's just our period now is 8 pi. And let me actually show you guys that too. Remember the thing up here that we did to get the period, it's 2 pi divided by b. Well, the b in this problem is 1/4. And 2 pi divided by 1/4 is actually 8 pi. That's why this makes perfect sense, that one period is being covered in 8 pi. Okay, great. Moving on. Okay, this one's got a lot going on. So let's try, if you like my way, let's graph, let's get our data points for just plain old cosine first. Okay, so cosine, same key points, 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. But for cosine, they have different y values. Remember, it's 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. Okay, let's see what's happening here. So the only thing that's changing in the x is a period change. But if you're multiplying by pi, actually, remember when it's a horizontal stretch or compression, you do the opposite. So it's not pi times x, it's x divided by pi. Okay, you're going to do the opposite of what it is. Now, to all the y's, we're doing two things. We're multiplying them by negative 4, and then we're also shifting them down 2. Okay, so all of our x's need to get divided by pi. So 0, if you divide this by pi, it's just 1/2. Divided by pi is 1. Divided by pi is 3/2. Divided by pi is 2. And then all these we're going to multiply by negative 4 minus 2. So this is minus 6, minus 2, 2, negative 2, negative 6. Okay, let's sketch our graph. Okay, so our new 5 key points are 0, 1/2, 1, 3/2, and 2. Now let's see. So now our y's go from negative 6 to negative 2 to 2. I can make this a little bit higher. Okay, so this one, because there was a vertical shift, we're not going to have a 0 point for the y. So it might help if you guys want, our new kind of like midline is at negative 2 now. I don't know if that helps. Okay, so let's get our points down. We have one at 0, negative 6, 1/2, comma, negative 2, 1, comma, 2, 3/2, comma, negative 2, and 2, comma, negative 6. So let's see if this makes sense. It does look like a cosine graph. The reason it got flipped is because of the negative sign. And then the period change also changed because of that. 2 pi divided by pi is 2. Okay, awesome. Now on the back, there are just some going backwards. If I give you a graph, can you write the function with any transformations? And there's multiple answers for these. I'm just going to do the one that I think is the most obvious. So for me, on this one, I see this as a cosine graph. Some of you might have seen it as a sine graph, but I decided to look at this section, and to me, that's what a cosine looks like. Okay, so we know it's going to be a cosine. Well, we don't, but that's the way I'm going to do it. Now let's get our amplitude. The range goes from negative 3 to 3, so we know that the amplitude is 3. Okay, we also know that there's a period change. Usually it's 2 pi, but we're doing one period. This one is 1. Okay, so that means that in the parenthesis with the x, we need to find b. Okay, and the way you can find b is by doing 2 pi divided by the period. That's going to give us b. Okay, so our b is going to be 2 pi. And just to check, 2 pi divided by 2 pi is 1. Okay, and then let's see. I don't have any shifts, so we're done. That is your equation. Again, there are multiple answers. Okay, now b, if I'm looking at b, the easiest thing I see is a sine curve, but there's one issue. It got flipped. sloped, usually sine goes up and then down. This one's going down and then up. So I know from the start it's going to be a negative sine graph. Again, multiple answers. This is the way I'm doing it. Let's get our amplitude. This one's range is -2 to 2, so we know the amplitude is 2. Now let's find our period. Okay, this one goes from, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the period is 4. So to find b, we do 2 pi divided by 4. And that reduces to pi over 2. So that's going to be our b. And then it's not getting shifted at all the way I did it, so we are done. All right, guys, that is sine and cosine graphs. Thanks for watching.